In this video, I'm going to show the live writing process of writing what will hopefully become an 8-figure VSL. I've personally now written 5 VSLs that have hit over $1 million a month. And we have an offer that I'm very, very excited is currently at 7 figures and is very quickly looking like it will hit 8, which is exciting. Hopefully I'm not calling my shot too early. But this is for all my marketing nerds, copywriters, anyone who creates their own marketing. A lot of people are surprised that I still do all of my own copywriting, all of my own marketing. Pretty much every single ad, VSL, funnel that I've ever put out has been personally written by me, and now with a little help of AI. So in this video, I thought it'd be interesting to share start to finish the entire process of creating an initial first draft. And this is largely following the same process. I have another video that goes over my VSL writing process. I'll link it in the description if you want to check that out. But this is literally start to finish. I'm guessing this video will probably be around like an hour and a half, if not maybe a little longer. So buckle up, get a drink, and we can get started. So this offer is for my software company, which is called Kadara. Kadara is really, really cool. We've been doing pretty well with it with a VSL to a book a call funnel. And now we are going to be introducing a low ticket funnel. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Basically, it's just that low ticket funnels, in my opinion, open you up to a lot more scale. So a low ticket funnel is where someone purchases something small, usually like a course or some sort of digital asset for like 20, 40, $100, something like that. And then obviously on the back end of that, there's a sales call, there's more upsells that people can ascend to. So we've been doing really, really well just with a classic book a call funnel. But I think this is going to open up a really new layer of growth for us. So at a very high level, what Kadara is basically a software platform that allows anyone to create their own AI product. So Alex Hormozi, famously, he just did last year this really huge Guinness World Record, $100 million launch. And one of the big needle movers that he personally said for that launch was him creating his own AI, his acquisition.com AI. And a lot of people bought into that offer that sold over 100 million just for access to that AI. And what it basically was he took all of his books, all of his courses, everything that makes him valuable as a consultant, as a coach, and he turned it into an AI product that instead of someone having to go through all of his books, all of his courses to learn everything that he knows, now they can just purchase his AI and get access to that knowledge and have the AI basically be able to do it for themselves. So that's what Kadara as a product ultimately is. That's what we're going to be writing the VSL for. What the platform does is we allow any coach, consultant, course creator to basically take all of their knowledge and turn it, just like Alex Hormozi did, into their own AI product that they can then sell to their audience. And we've been doing well with this, like I said, with a classic book a call funnel. And now the goal is that we're going to be selling it as a low ticket offer, probably $29. That's where we're currently seeing the best results with a lot of our other clients that are doing low ticket VSLs, which is kind of like going to be an introductory course where then on the back end of it, they will be able to get started with the Kadara platform. So the very first thing that I always do with every single VSL, I like to map out what I call a belief ladder. And I could do an entire other video on this, but basically what this is, you can kind of think of it as the table of contents for whatever piece of marketing you're creating. And this is especially helpful where now AI does a lot of the actual writing for me. My job kind of as a copywriter, as a marketer, is really planning and directing and doing the high level strategy that the AI is then going to be carrying out. And in the past, when I've had junior copywriters helping me and working under me, this is largely what I did. I would plan out kind of at a high level what the offer looked like, and then I would turn it over to them and say, okay, write a first draft with all of these notes. So that's essentially what I'm going to be doing. And the belief ladder starts with ultimately what is the motivation that someone needs to have, that our marketing is going to engineer inside of someone that is ultimately going to end with them wanting to purchase Kadara. That's how any piece of persuasive marketing works. The very last step that we want someone to do is we want them to take an action, which in this case is purchasing and getting a license for our software platform. So like I said, we've been running a book a call VSL for this funnel already. And what we're finding, the big motivation that is actually driving a lot of people currently is pain. Specifically, the pain that selling online courses and coaching has gotten a lot harder. And maybe you've seen, I don't know if you have, one of the top performing ads that we currently have right now has a hook. Literally, the first sentence that I say is ChatGPT is killing online courses because people are realizing that they can just ask AI any question that they want 24/7 without having to go watch through a ton of video modules. So because our ideal client of the platform is ultimately someone that sells online courses, sells coaching, sells their knowledge and expertise in some way, this grabs their attention where they're essentially hearing that their entire business model could be turned upside down. There's actually a lot of statistics about this, one of which, the main one that we've actually used, which is the top online course platforms like Udemy and Coursera lost 120 million users, or about 10% of their user base slash traffic in 2025. And this coincided with ChatGPT doubling from 400 million to 800 million users. These are already statistics and things that I have found that we've incorporated into other forms of marketing. And the way that I was actually able to find them was by using this AI platform. It's called Perplexity. Perplexity is an AI that's used by a lot of academic researchers, a lot of like students, because unlike a lot of other AIs that can sometimes hallucinate or make up information, Perplexity Perplexity is really, really good at finding legitimate sources for statistics and studies and actually verified news data. So when I was first creating the first initial version of this offer, I literally went to Perplexity and I said, hey, find me statistics around the online course, the online coaching industry in 2025. And we actually were able to find this one, which obviously, if you are a course creator, if you're a coach, you're going to find this very compelling. And this is really one of the first key foundational points around my personal copywriting style, around what I have personally had a lot of success with, which is that we want to approach our copywriting like we're a lawyer in a courtroom, basically. We want to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt the thing that we are selling someone on, the product or the service, the offer, the idea, proof beyond a shadow of a doubt that what we are talking about is real. If you can't tell already, I am a very logical person, and that is the way that I sell. I sell with a lot of logic. It is not really, kind of like the over-the-top, persuasive, emotional sell. There is definitely emotion involved. Granted, we're starting off with pain, but underneath every single one of these points of the belief ladder, I want to make sure I have a minimum 2, 3, 4 points of hard proof. Things that people can literally Google, like these statistics, and people can see, okay, maybe, I don't end up buying Lucas's thing. Maybe I don't end up working with him, but they know that what I'm saying is true, that it is absolutely a fact that online course platforms had a very rough year in 2025. And at the same time, ChatGPT and all of these other AI platforms are exploding with users and traffic and revenue. It's not really hard to put the pieces together. So that is essentially the first step in the argument that we are creating for someone watching this. The other thing that's really important to consider, and it's a huge mistake I see so many copywriters, so many marketers, so many entrepreneurs making, is they assume that their audience already thinks in the same way that they do. So I know personally, just because I run a marketing agency, in addition to the software platform, I know from having a lot of active clients that a lot of people have been struggling. A lot of our clients who do sell online courses, who do sell coaching, have found 2024 and 2025 to be very difficult years. So that is something that if I was an amateur copywriter, I could just go into the VSL assuming and talking as if everyone automatically believes that the online course and the online coaching space has gotten a lot more difficult. However, that would be a mistake because yes, while there are a lot of business owners and coaches and course creators who have been struggling, there are a lot of people who maybe don't believe that, or maybe they are having a difficult time, but they haven't fully admitted to themselves that the industry as a whole is kind of getting disrupted. So we never want to assume that our audience believes what we believe. And that's really why in this belief ladder, there's 3 steps to it. The first one, the first point of motivation is honestly the most important, because as you can imagine, if someone's seeing you cold for the very first time, they've never heard about you, your product, your service, your company, they're going to be the most skeptical at the very beginning of the sales process. So when they see me in an ad on social media, for example, that's when their skepticism is going to be at the highest. So that means at the very start of the sales process, my proof, my logical sell also needs to be the absolute highest. So this means, again, this is just my personal copywriting style, what I've found the most success with. This means at the very beginning of the sales process, we need to have undeniable proof. There should not be any holes in our argument, again, just like a lawyer in a courtroom. When we get deeper into the belief ladder, when someone is deeper into the sales funnel and in watching the VSL, that is when we can start to be a little more, I guess you could say, hyperbolic. We can use less statistics. We could talk a little bit more about anecdotes, personal stories, personal experiences. And again, I recognize that there are plenty of people, plenty of marketers, plenty of funnels that have been written the total opposite way. I'm just telling you what has worked really, really well for me. So we want to start with a lot of logic, a lot of proof. So I'm actually going to outline these next 2 sections of the belief ladder, but then I'm going to come back and improve this based on what I've kind of sketched out in 2 and 3, where I feel like this is falling a little bit short. But we have a good start for now. We're starting with the pain of our ideal client, a course creator or a coach who has maybe found 2024, 2025 to be more difficult. Now, what we want to do in the second step of the belief ladder is what I call pointing. I'm going to put this in quotation marks. This is going to be, I would say like a third of the way through the sales funnel. So in a VSL, this means someone has been watching for maybe like 4 or 5 minutes, and we can pretty safely assume that they're motivated. They do know that something is wrong and they want to make a change. And I'll say very, very quickly, pain is only one of the dimensions that, you can motivate someone with. The other 2 that I mainly use are desire and curiosity. This is obviously like a pain-focused angle because this is what's been working well. So let's assume someone's like 4 or 5 minutes into the VSL. They do believe that selling online courses, selling coaching has gotten harder, 2024, 2025. They're kind of thinking now, well, now what? Like, okay, I have all this motivation. You're telling me like the industry and my business model is being disrupted. Tell me where to point all of this motivational energy. And obviously, being a marketer, being an entrepreneur, we're eventually going to point them towards the solution that ends with them purchasing our product and service. The key here, and this is another kind of point about my personal style of copywriting, the key here is that we're leaving the door open enough that someone does not necessarily need to work with us. And what do I mean by that? I think a lot of people immediately, as soon as they've motivated someone, as soon as they've persuaded someone to take action, they kind of jump the gun and immediately say, well, here's why my company or here's why I am the best person to do this. And most people, when they start hearing a sales pitch like that, they start to lose a little bit of trust, because when it comes to someone being willing to listen to your sales message, when it comes to someone being willing to listen to your sales argument, you should appear to be unbiased. You should appear to be kind of like, the way I've heard a lot of coaches explain this is you should be kind of like a consultative doctor, where no one's going to trust the doctor, where if you go into their office and you say, oh, my head kind of hurts, I'm experiencing these pains, the doctor immediately jumps into prescribing a solution where they're saying, oh, you need Matrezolone and, that's going to cost $100. Here's the prescription. You can pay at the front. You would be a little distrustful of that doctor because you'd be thinking, wait a minute, are you getting paid by this prescription drug company? Because it seems like you didn't really listen to what I had to say. It seems like you're just jumping into this solution. So if you compare that to a doctor who says, we're seeing a lot of headaches around this time of year because of the pollen, the air pressure, and really what you need is this kind of drug that specifically is designed to help with air quality. So the top drug that we actually have that helps with drug quality is mitrezolone, but ultimately there are quite a few others. That's just personally the one that I recommend. He's doing the same thing. He's selling you the same drug. He's kind of jumping into the sales process the exact same way, but the approach of it sounds a lot more believable. You are much more likely to go along with a doctor or anyone's recommendation if it feels like they are not using their own kind of selfish desires to just push you into something that benefits them, which is like a salesperson's commission or a company selling you their most expensive product or service. No one wants to do that. So the approach here in the second step of the belief ladder, when it comes to pointing their motivation, we want to point them towards the general area of what our solution is. And if they agree with us, if they believe this second step of the belief ladder, then logically, the third point about them working with us, about them purchasing from us, is going to be pretty easy, just like in that doctor example. But again, we always want to leave the door open because it's 2026. Most people have dealt with a spammy or a scummy salesperson. They've had a sales pitch rammed down their throat. And just we as humans, we can kind of just detect that. It's not that hard for someone to tell when someone is not really looking out for your best interests and they're just trying to line their own pockets. So that is why, in my opinion, this logical style of selling and in the second step, kind of leaving the door open is very, very important. So hopefully that wasn't too roundabout, complex, confusing of an explanation. So what does this actually look like? If our ultimate goal is we want people to purchase our software, which enables them to turn their knowledge and expertise into an AI product that they can sell on their own, and they already do believe this first point, which is selling online courses and coaching has gotten a lot harder because ChatGPT and AI is stealing a lot of that traffic. Well, the second thing that I want to point them towards is this idea that the biggest opportunity in 2026 and beyond is by working with AI, not competing with it. And the way that someone actually does this, if they were to become a user of our platform or if they were just to do this independently, is by taking their knowledge and expertise and turning it into an AI product that their audience can actually use. So this, if I could wave a magic wand and say, every single person watching this VSL believes this point that it is possible, I'll say that, it is possible to take your knowledge expertise and turn it into an AI product that their audience can actually use and will pay for. If I could just wave a magic wand, make everyone believe this who's watching this VSL, you can understand that it's not going to be that hard for me to sell my software, to sell my platform that literally does exactly this. That's kind of, what the ideal scenario would be. Obviously, I do not have that magic wand. So what do we have to do? We have to support this point with proof. What would someone need to hear, or what would someone need to believe in order for them to believe that it is possible to take their knowledge and expertise and turn it into an AI product? Well, I already brought up one of the first points, which is all of the top, or I wouldn't say all, many of the top coaches and course creators are already doing this. And if you've seen any of my ads for this product, you'll know that I say this in literally every single one. I already mentioned Alex Hormozi. He created his own AI. Tony Robbins, #1 mindset and personal development coach on the planet, is already doing this. Even billionaires, investors like Ray Dalio. And there are many others, but these are the three that in the time that we've been testing this offer, this funnel, the existing VSL that we've been running, these are the three that I repeat over and over and over. So you can see how this point, and this was something that I kind of used Perplexity AI to find. I also kind of just did my own research. This is actually how I got into this software in the first place, was I saw Tony Robbins, towards the end of 2024, had actually created his own AI. He was pushing it a lot more heavily. And I was starting to think, well, if this is a guy who's been doing coaching and seminars and courses for the past like 25, 30 years, and this is the direction he's going in, well, this is obviously something worth paying attention to. So again, we're getting one step closer to that magic wand. If someone hears this, they hear, oh, well, all of the top coaches and course creators, people are making tens of millions of dollars selling their knowledge. They are deciding to work with AI rather than competing with it. Maybe I should do that. That is a piece of compelling proof. The other point that we also use is the fact that this is a new type of AI, and it is called digital labor. This is something that I actually was able to find using Perplexity, where digital labor is basically a subset of the entire world of AI, which the simple definition is basically AI that is trained on one specific type of knowledge and expertise and can actually carry out real tasks similar to how a human employee would. So all of the traditional household AI companies like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, they are all chatbots, which is very popular. It's very useful. But that alone is not something that a company is going to be willing to pay thousands of dollars for, because why would they? They can just go to a chatbot like ChatGPT, which is $20 a month. So there is a new subset of AI, which is called digital labor. It was a term coined by Mark Benioff, who is worth, I think, $12 billion. And you might be wondering, it's like, why do you know all these things? Why are you mentioning these things? Because these are the sorts of things that, even in passing, they are worth something. They're worth their weight in persuasiveness. If I was going to say this and say, oh, I made up this term, digital labor, someone is going to imagine, oh, well, Lucas has just made this up and he's making this whole sales pitch because he just wants to sell us, his software. Then, again, it doesn't sound like I have their best interests at heart. Everything that we've gotten here so far kind of just sounds like I'm reporting on what is already happening in the world. And again, Lucas is not worth $12 billion, much less $1 billion. It's worth more in the world of business and investing if someone who has had a lot more success is already saying something. It's the same reason we bring up Alex Hormozi, Tony Robbins, because these are the quote unquote big dogs who, if they're doing something, if they're ahead of the curve, it's worth paying attention to. So I bring up Mark Benioff because he is the one who coins the term digital labor, and he predicts it's going to be worth $12 trillion. And again, this is just a prediction, but he's had a good amount of success. He already has made a bunch of money. If he's saying something, just like if Warren Buffett was going to give investment advice, it's probably worth listening to. It's probably worth paying attention to. These are all things that I want to present to showcase as much as I can of an impartial point of view. Because again, Lucas could just be making all of these things up. Lucas could just say, well, I made up this term digital labor and I made my own digital labor AI and I had all of this success. People could hear that and maybe some people would buy into that, but a good percentage of people would also just think, well, Lucas, you're just saying all these things because it benefits you. You're just saying this because you did it and now you want me to pay you to do the same thing. But at this point, I've presented 4 pieces of proof that are completely independent of me, that you can go find a million sources on the internet, news sites that have reported these things. The first is the statistic about Udemy and Coursera. The second is the statistic about ChatGPT. The third is, I wouldn't call it a statistic, but it's the proof that the top coaches in the world are already doing this. And then the fourth is this term, this subset of AI called digital labor that was coined by a deca-billionaire. So at this point, I have literally not told them anything about myself. I am literally just kind of reporting on, I'm kind of documenting an argument. And in my opinion, this is the most persuasive argument that someone can make. The most persuasive sales pitch you can ever make is one that is almost hard to ignore. And that's my goal when I'm writing this VSL. I want them to think, even if they don't become a client of my software, I want them to think, I cannot go on in my business without making this change, without at least changing something based on all of the information that Lucas just shared with me. Um, and obviously, if someone believes that, if they are motivated by that, they are going to be much more likely, like 100 times more likely, to end up becoming a client of our software. So again, this is kind of where we want to leave the door open. We're not forcing anyone into our platform. We're just pointing out things that are happening in the business model that they're in the world in general. And then when it comes time to do it, we are going to present a solution, which obviously is a logical fix for a lot of the problems that we're talking about. One of the other things that I know about this, just from having already written VSLs for this, and it's kind of the basis for a lot of the marketing, $12 trillion is literally 60 times the size of the online education industry. The online education industry is about a $200 billion industry. So the difference between 12 trillion and 200 billion is about 60 times, if my math is correct, which is very compelling. That doesn't mean automatically you're going to make millions or billions of dollars. But most people, especially entrepreneurs, the types of clients that we're selling to, they want to be in a rising tide opportunity. They don't want to be selling newspapers when the radio has just released. You're going to make your life a lot harder. You want to go into an industry where the tide is rising, because as the saying goes, a rising tide raises all ships. So again, nowhere in this belief ladder so far have I even talked about myself, my personal experience, the testimonials of our platform, because those things are nice to have, but they do not make up the backbone of your sales argument. Those things do help, and once someone believes these things, it will make sense for them to learn about, well, who is Lucas? Who is this person telling me all of these things? Who else has done this? Are you just kind of speaking about these kind of academic, high-level topics, or is this something that actually normal, everyday people are doing? Those things will be helpful. But I'll tell you this, and this is a big reason why a lot of coaches, a lot of course creators are struggling in recent years, is because the old way of just saying, I'm so amazing, my students are so amazing, look at all these people I've transformed, look at all these results, look at my rags to riches story, look at my mansion, just come buy my thing. That doesn't work as well anymore. And it can work. In fact, I'm sure you've probably seen people on social media who do that very, very effectively. But as you've also seen, that has become incredibly competitive, where if you think that you are just going to be able to buy a Lamborghini and show that to people and be like, oh, well, come buy my course about how to get rich and you can get a Lamborghini, that's not as useful anymore. And the reason is because there's a million other people on Instagram now that also have a Lamborghini. It's not as rare, it's not as unique, it's not as interesting. So as a result, it's not as persuasive, it's not as compelling for someone to make a decision off of. So the whole goal of everything that we're doing here is, number one, like I said, prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that what we're talking about is a real thing. Number two, we also want to tell them things that ideally they have not heard anywhere else. It is a million times easier to sell something different, to sell something new, than it is to sell something that's maybe better. And this is, the general idea of selling something that's commoditized versus selling something that is truly one of a kind. Anytime you're selling something that's a commodity, anytime you're selling something that is being compared to 10 different competitors, that is where you're going to have a really hard time. You're going to deal with the most skeptical people. You're going to have the most price resistance, people trying to nickel and dime you, and they're buying based on cost rather than on value. There's a lot of problems with that I'm sure there's people that have built successful businesses doing that. I would prefer not to, just because I prefer to make my life easier. I want to work with clients that are excited to work with me, that truly see my solution as one of a kind. They feel like they've been searching for something like me, for something like my product, and they finally found it, and that they couldn't have gotten it anywhere else. To me, that is a much better business than to sell to people who are constantly comparing you to 10 other competitors. So part of that is having a good product and having a good company. The other part of it, which maybe a lot of people don't want to hear, is marketing. Your marketing is going to dictate the quality of clients that enter into your business, which then is going to dictate how good of an experience they have with your product or service, which then is going to affect your business as a whole. So this is why, if you can't tell already, I'm so passionate about marketing. It's because the marketing in recent years has become kind of the sole differentiator of how companies are perceived and how they succeed or they fail. Take AI, ChatGPT. There's a million other companies that also have AI models similar to ChatGPT. But ChatGPT is number one in the App Store, at least at the time of recording this video. If you ask an older person, like if I ask my parents, like what is AI, what's an AI software, probably the first thing that comes to their mind is going to be ChatGPT. And I'll tell you that ChatGPT is not necessarily the best product. There are plenty of other AIs, depending on your use case, that are going to work a lot better than ChatGPT. But 90% of the population now kind of just defaults to ChatGPT. And that's because of marketing. That's because it's top of mind. It's the first thing that most people believe is going to actually solve their problem. So that's why all of this is so, so important. It's because if you are marketing yourself, your own product, your own service, your own business, you could have the most amazing product or service in the world. But if your marketing is not set up to let people know that before they've ever transacted with you, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle the entire way. And if you're a copywriter or a marketer who does this work with clients for other businesses, you don't want to be in the situation where you have some initial success, your marketing is bringing in new leads, new customers, new clients, but then all of those clients and customers end up turn out to be a pain in the butt, and then your clients getting mad at you saying, oh, this is all your fault. All of these customers, they don't see how amazing my product and service is. That's ultimately the responsibility of marketing, and it's why I'm harping on this so much. You need to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, not even just that, oh, we're the best company, we have the best product, the best customer service. We need to prove in reality that the things that we are talking about are happening. Someone could never become a client or a user of my software, Kodara, but they will hopefully have this little bug stuck in their brain of, oh, all the top coaches, all the top course creators, they're doing this. They're all pivoting their businesses to work with AI rather than against it. Oh, there's this new industry called digital labor. I should do more research about that. All of those things are things that we want to stick in people's heads. We want them to be unable to forget about, because then even if they don't believe in our product or our service yet, eventually they will. Eventually that little bug, that little idea that's been planted in their head is going to grow and is going to force them to take some sort of action, which will likely end up with them becoming a client, becoming a user of our platform. That's the goal. So very long-winded rant, but this is coming out decently well, I would say. So we have the first motivation point, which I'm going to come back to. We have the second point of pointing. We want to point people to the higher level idea. So at its core, what our software platform is, we help our users create their own digital labor AI that they can create and sell and offer to their audience. So I've pointed out that the top coaches in the world are doing this. This is something that is a real industry. It's called digital labor. If I'm thinking about logically, if I was to tell some random person on the street this, who maybe is a coach or of some sort, if I was to tell some random person on the street this, what would be the next question or what would be the next objection that they would likely have? And if I was imagining that, I would probably imagine they would say, okay, all these other people are doing this. There is this new type of digital labor, but how can I actually do this? Who's to say that this is maybe this works for Alex Hormozi, Tony Robbins, billionaires, but who's to say that this is actually going to work for me? So that's the next bullet point I'm going to put right here, which is that anyone with specialized knowledge or expertise can create their own digital labor AI. Again, putting myself into the shoes of coach on the street, who I'm just kind of telling them this idea, the first thing they're going to wonder is, well, why would someone ever use my AI over ChatGPT? I've used ChatGPT. It seems pretty smart. It doesn't know everything, but I'm just some guy. I'm not a billionaire. How am I ever going to compete with ChatGPT? And we have an answer for this that we have used in some of our existing VSLs, which is that household AIs like ChatGPT are generalized and need to be trained on anything and everything. which creates a gap for people who need real solutions to painful problems. The way that we describe this, the way that I've described this in previous marketing, is that a lot of household AIs like ChatGPT are kind of like an eager intern. It's kind of like, like that fresh out of college, 20-something-year-old who doesn't have a lot of experience in their industry, but they're always really excited to help you out. And that's kind of the analogy that I make in the VSL, which is I'll say, if you go to ChatGPT and you tell it you want to start selling ice cream on the moon and this is your new business idea, ChatGPT by default is going to say, that's an amazing idea. I'm going to write up your business plan about how to sell ice cream on the moon. That's kind of like what an eager intern is. As you can imagine, that sort of AI can be useful for a lot of like household everyday things, like if you need to make a grocery list or if you want to write an email to a coworker or something like that. But if you're trying to make a big life-changing decision, like if you're trying to get help with your marriage before it ends in divorce, if you're trying to get help with your business before it goes out of business, if you're trying to get help with your investments, most people feel like they need something a little more specialized. They need a trained, expert professional. And this has always been the case. This is not new with AI. A lot of people literally will hire eager interns for a lot of tasks. They'll hire VAs or virtual assistants, but then they also realize that they're going to need a trained expert professional, a consultant, an executive, a C-suite professional who's going to be able to make some of those hard calls, some of those hard decisions. So this is the first place in the VSL, at least in terms of these bullet points that I'm writing out, where I'm not pointing out cold, hard facts. I'm starting to get into hyperbole, which is opinion. And I'm allowed to do this at this point. I've earned the right to do this at this stage of the VSL because we are, by now, over halfway through the belief ladder, which, if I'm thinking about this in the context of a VSL, someone has probably been watching for like 8 minutes, 10 minutes. And if someone has actually genuinely been listening to me for 8 to 10 minutes, I can somewhat assume that they believe what I'm saying. They are somewhat persuaded. They're interested. They're maybe a little skeptical. They're maybe not ready to pull out their credit card and become, a high ticket client. But we can pretty safely assume that they believe what I'm saying, that they're not 100% in disagreement that AI is kind of taking over the world and is disrupting the businesses of online courses and online coaches. If they didn't believe that, they probably would have clicked off the video. And that's why I've nested this section of the VSL in the place that it has. I've saved this hyperbolic selling point because if I started with something like this, there's a lot more room for people to disagree. There's a lot more of a chance that someone's going to be like, that's not true. And they just click off the VSL. So I always kind of think of it like any piece of marketing is kind of like a slippery slope, where at the very top, someone is looking down at this water slide and they're deciding whether they want to go down the water slide. And just like a slippery slope, just like a water slide, once you've built up enough speed, it's kind of hard to get off of it. If you're like still in like the slow part of a slide, you could just roll over, you'll stop moving and you'll be able to get off the slide. But if you're like over halfway down the slide and it's wet, it's a water slide, whatever, this is a bad analogy, you're already flying. You could be spinning over however many times, you're not going to be able to get off of it. And that's kind of how belief is built. That's kind of how people get persuaded. You've probably talked to someone in your life where no matter what you said, you knew you were never going to be able to persuade this person to think differently. Some people think that way about toxic relationships. Some people think that way about politics, about religion. You've probably met someone or known someone or heard someone who kind of has that sort of belief. And we're probably not going to be able to build that sort of belief in, a 10 or 20 minute VSL. But we want to try and get as close as possible. That's our job as a marketer, as a copywriter, as an entrepreneur. We want to build as much belief as humanly possible because that's going to create the best types of clients, the best types of customers for the business that we're trying to get customers for. So again, this is not cold hard proof, but we've already stacked so much of that at this point that we can now start to get a little more hyperbolic, start talking in a little bit more anecdotes. So So I make the eager intern versus a trained expert professional analogy. The other thing that we point out, which is actually one of the biggest opportunities, it's one of the biggest selling points of our platform, is the fact that household AIs have a huge gap where they can't actually do the work. And this is the biggest reason why, in my opinion, a lot of coaches, a lot of course creators, a lot of people who have expert specialized knowledge are never going to have to worry about being out of a job, because people are always going to be willing to pay for someone to do the work for them. I honestly do think in every industry, the people who are most at risk of being disrupted by AI are the people who are kind of in the middle, kind of like that middle manager archetype, where they're not a complete beginner who is like fresh out of college and you could like underpay and you're going to get a great deal because they're going to work for you a ton. But it's also not the most knowledgeable top 1% expert. The middle is honestly the most at risk of being disrupted because they're kind of in this awkward middle ground of being expensive but not cheap. And they also usually have a lot of knowledge, but they also don't have all of the knowledge in the world. You also have to pay a premium for it. So this is the area that most people are realizing, oh, maybe I don't need to hire a personal trainer. Maybe I can just go and talk to ChatGPT and maybe it can make a workout plan for me. A lot of people are realizing maybe I don't need to hire an advertising agency or find a Facebook ads coach. I can just ask ChatGPT what I should do with my advertising. That, in my opinion, is the most at risk of being disrupted. I think virtual assistants and college interns who are willing to work for very low wages, there's always going to be a demand for that. And there obviously is always going to be a demand for the tippity top of their field, the top 1%. So we want to present this as a point of proof. And again, this is not cold, hard facts. It's more anecdotal. It's more hyperbole. But hopefully, in the way that I just described it, no one who's watching this video is like, oh, that's total bullshit, Lucas. That makes zero sense. You can at least understand where I'm coming from. And that's the goal of this point of the belief ladder. So going back to this bullet point that I just wrote, household AIs have a huge gap where they can't actually do the work. So this is the whole point that I was just making, which is ChatGPT can write you a workout plan, but it can't actually help you through it and isn't going to hold you accountable. ChatGPT can generally analyze stocks and make recommendations, but it can't live update your portfolio and make recommendations for your actual long-term goals. So the reason I bring these two examples up is because these are two examples of people that are still going to have demand. Personal trainers like this still have clients. Personal trainers that actually do help people work through their workout plan, their nutrition plan, helps hold them accountable. Those people still have businesses. They're not out of business at the time of recording this video. The same is true of this example. Wealth managers and stock market advisors still have a market. Advisors still have a market for this. Again, these are the people at the top of their field who are still doing the work for their clients. And then the intern, the VAs, those people are still going to have clients as well because people are always going to have a demand for cheap labor, essentially. But the middle, where if all a personal trainer is doing is giving them a workout plan and they're charging $500 for that, or they're charging $500 for their course about how to write your own workout plan, that person is losing business. That person's clients are thinking, why would I pay $500 for this? I could just go to ChatGPT and it'll probably be 80-90% as good. So hopefully, you can let me know if I'm wrong. Hopefully, any reasonable person who's watching this, who does sell their knowledge, who is a coach, who is an expert, if they heard that, they would probably agree with that. They would not disagree with that. And that is the key with getting people down your slippery slope. The slope gets slipperier, however you say it, the slope picks up momentum the more times we can get someone to agree with us. The more times where someone nods their head and says, that's true. I do believe that. That is what I'm seeing in my world view. So all of the easiest way to do that is to point out something that's a fact, that's undeniable, like these statistics that we've started with. But we can't do just statistics and hard facts because people get bored. I'm a pretty logical person, but if I heard 10 statistics, my head's going to start to spin because I'm going to have a hard time remembering all of them. We do want to start to get a little more into the emotion, the hyperbolic, the anecdotal, which is what we're doing at this stage. But we still want to make it something that's largely agreeable, that checks the box in someone's head of saying that does make sense, that does align with what I'm seeing or what I've heard or what my friends are saying that are in this industry. Hopefully everything I'm saying does not sound like the ramblings of a crazy person. But we have this parent idea of anyone with specialized knowledge or expertise can create their own digital labor AI, and household AIs have a huge gap where they can't actually do the work. Because again, I'm imagining the person on the street. If I'm telling them everything before this point, I'm imagining what question, what objection do they have? Probably it would be reasonable for them to ask, well, why would someone use mine? Why would someone use my AI rather than just going to ChatGPT, which is $20 or free? And we're pointing out all of the gaps, all of the flaws with ChatGPT, which is there's a knowledge gap where they're very generalized. They can tell you everything about the world. They could tell you about the pyramids of Egypt. They could tell you about the best dog food, but that isn't necessarily relevant for what you're trying to accomplish, for what someone is trying to accomplish when they do normally go to a trained expert professional. And household AIs have a huge gap where they can't actually do the work, where it can write you a workout plan, but it's not going to coach you through it. It can analyze stocks, but it's not going to live watch your portfolio with you and make live recommendations. And this is where the opportunity for digital labor exists. And this is the point where it would make logical sense for me to share testimonials from people that maybe are using our platform, or even just third-party case studies. These wouldn't even be our customers. These might not even be our clients. I'm just showing them that, hey, there's these companies out there that are multi-million dollar, billion-dollar companies that technically, you could just say, oh, ChatGPT can do that. But despite that, people are clearly still willing to pay them hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for their AI digital labor product. So I'm going to leave a placeholder here. I always write TK. That's a little writing tip because TK in the English language never appears. So if you ever do Control F, Command F, TK, you're only ever going to find your placeholder. You're not going to find any words because, again, that doesn't appear in any words in the English language. So I'm going to leave this as a placeholder because I'm going to want to stick in some of these examples of companies that are not our customers. They're not our personal testimonials. They're just examples of companies that are doing this broader idea. And I have a few, but I'm going to come back to that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of scan through this because I feel like this is not a bad starting place. And I definitely do want to come back and kind of strengthen this first bullet point of motivation. I feel like our pointing belief is actually pretty strong. I feel like we're in a good place with it where, again, I always just go back to talking to a random person at a street. Maybe that's a little weird. You could say you're talking to someone at a bar who just happens to be your ideal customer. And you're kind of imagining going back and forth with them, not in a sales conversation, but you're just telling them an idea. And a sales pitch should be compelling enough that just telling someone the idea, who is your ideal customer, they should be trying to pull more out of you. They should be the ones saying, well, wait a minute, tell me more about that. Tell me exactly how that works. That is the ideal sales pitch rather than a pushy sales pitch where you're just constantly shoving something down someone's throat. In this example, I am presenting the idea. We're saying the biggest opportunity in 2026 and beyond is by working with AI, not competing against it. That it is possible for you to make your own AI, just like the top coaches like Alex Hormozi, Tony Robbins, Ray Dalio are doing, because there's a new type of AI, digital labor, which is basically that's trained on one specific type of knowledge and expertise and actually carry out real tasks similar to how an employee would. This is actually another point TK, examples of human employee tasks. Because this has been left a little vague until we get to this point. I do give a few examples here that help make it feel more down to earth, where someone could be like, oh, that is true. ChatGPT can't do that. But there is this gap of, I'm imagining it would be like 2 to 4 minutes in the VSL where someone could just be confused. They're like, what exactly is this? What exactly is digital labor? What is it doing? So I'm going to want to come back to that point to present some more tangible, down-to-earth examples so they're not confused in the meantime. Then we can go into the Mark Benioff statistic, $12 trillion, 60 times the size of the online education industry. That's all great. And then we're pointing out the objection of, well, why is digital labor AI so huge? Why not just use ChatGPT? I'm going to delete that. That's honestly a better heading for this section. Delete. Fix this. And the answer to this is household AIs are generalized. They need to be trained on and are often trained on anything and everything, which creates a gap for people who need specialized solutions. Again, the eager intern versus a trained expert professional. Hyperbolic, but hopefully that gets a nod of agreement mentally for someone who's listening to this. In addition to that, household AIs have a huge gap where they can't actually do the work. I honestly feel like, and this is another really big part of copywriting and marketing in general, is just the order in which you present ideas. Because like I was talking about with this placeholder, someone could eventually watch the whole VSL, the whole piece of the marketing material, and get my full message. Most people don't do that. Most people watching this YouTube video have not even gotten to this point. In which case, if you have gotten to this point in the video, give me a comment with your favorite fruit to show that you've actually watched this far. Because most people, if you present them with an hour-long video, they're probably going to drop off at the 10 or 20 minute mark. If I give people a 30-minute VSL, most people are probably not going to watch past 10 or 12 minutes. You should not need people to watch the whole thing in order for them to be persuaded. In fact, ideally they don't, because I want people to take action. I want them to become a client or a customer or book a sales call or whatever. I want them to take action, not just sit around and listen to me. So if someone can be persuaded enough from just 5 minutes, from 10 minutes of watching me, that should be good. That should be a positive that we want to get more of. In order for that to actually happen, we cannot be leaving holes in our sales argument that maybe get addressed later. So we want to make sure everything is being presented in a timely manner. And that's why the order in which an argument is made could be more important. Because I'm reading this section about why is digital labor AI so huge? Why not just use ChatGPT? And I have 2 bullets here. The first bullet is about how knowledge that AIs like ChatGPT are trained on are not sufficient. They're eager interns. And then the second point is that household AIs like ChatGPT can't actually do the work. I think this is more compelling. I think this is more believable. I think someone who I'm talking to at a bar, who's my ideal client, would believe it to be more of an opportunity that ChatGPT can't actually go into your stock market account at Vanguard or Fidelity and analyze your stocks for you. ChatGPT can't literally see what you're eating and follow you to the gym and actually make live recommendations. That sounds more believable in my opinion versus ChatGPT not being smart enough. Even though that is technically true, I think a lot of people, more people are going to nod along, in my opinion, and maybe you think differently. You can let me know in the comments. I think more people are going to nod along with this than with this. That doesn't mean this is bad, but just like how we've ordered the belief ladder so far to start with hard facts, compelling proof that no one could disagree with, you can look it up and see that it's real. I want to do the same thing here. So I'm actually going to highlight this whole section, and maybe I'll rearrange this one in a second. I want to present this first. This idea that why is digital labor AI so huge? Why not just use ChatGPT? Well, first response to that is household AIs can't actually do the work. And that's another reason why I think having this very brief placeholder that I'm going to be filling in is also very, very important. So we've moved to that. We have the eager intern analogy, and then we have the opportunity for digital labor exists, where we're giving the testimonials and then the third-party case studies. I think that's a good flow. So I'm pretty happy, other than with these two placeholders. I've got that one and that one. I'll come back to those. Those are two placeholders in the pointing belief. And then the third one, which is getting someone to want to buy our program, our product, whatever, we'll do that last, because that's honestly kind of the easiest, in my opinion. And it's, again, if someone has sat through and listened to these first 2 points in a piece of marketing, which is probably going to be like 15, 20 minutes, it is very likely that if I make a sales pitch, even if it's not the world's best sales pitch, they're probably going to be reasonably persuaded by it. This is not usually the place where I see sales funnels or I see pieces of marketing losing people. It's usually in the first 2 points of the belief ladder. So let's go back to the first point, the motivation belief, where we're selling mainly on pain around how selling online courses and coaching has gotten a lot harder. This is a good statistic, but it's also very abstract, because most people watching this do not run a platform like Udemy and Coursera. Most people watching this video are small business owners who maybe, make multi 6 figures, low 7 figures. They've probably been selling their courses or coaching for a while now, for multiple years, and they probably have less than 10 employees. That's what I know about most of our clients so far. So this is a good piece of proof. This is a good fact, but it doesn't really personally relate to the person watching this. So I want to think about, again, this is probably one of the first things that someone would hear in a VSL. So it's very early, and as a result of that, we want to make sure it's a fact. It's a nod along that very few people are going to be able to disagree with. So I want to think about something like that, as well as something that a small independent business owner, like an independent coach, an independent course creator, would relate to. I'm going to write out a few ideas. I'm going to TK this and then write out a few. The first one is just that there's a lot of competition. I think a lot of people, and again, there's a reason I'm going to write out a bunch, because I'm not sure which is going to be the most compelling. I think a lot of business owners would agree, if they've been in business for any length of time, the amount of competition, the amount of copycats that exist in their industry has increased, does not decreased. And part of the reason for that is because anyone can make an Instagram and start calling themselves an expert and start stealing your clients. This is not a fact, but I think a very high percentage of people who are our ideal clients, try saying that 5 times fast, would nod along to that. They would agree that that is a real thing. So that's going to be one idea of what we could present here. Another one that I've used a bunch of times, which is that Forbes, this is statistic, Forbes says people see, on average, 10,000 advertisements every single day. Social media is more noisy than ever. And I think it is safe to assume that most people watching this video who are our ideal clients probably do use social media. They probably market their business online. That is pretty unanimous across a lot of our clients. I'm actually going to use Perplexity for this. This will be a good place, because I am honestly, a little stumped. I'm trying to think about what I would want to lead with. And what I'm going to ask Perplexity, find me statistics from 2024 or 2025 about how selling online coaching or online courses, this is why I like Perplexity, because you can give it these long run-on sentences and it will kind of know what you're talking about. Online education businesses has gotten harder or more competitive as a result of ChatGPT growing. Because that is ultimately what we're talking about. We're talking about how, in the second point of our belief ladder, is that we want people to be thinking about working with AI rather than seeing it as competition. So whatever we present to them in this first point of the belief ladder needs to somewhat align with that. I'm going to do just the normal search. I think is fine for now. If I was not recording this, I probably would do deep research. This will run for usually like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. But just for the sake of time and just to kind of get the wheels turning, this is just a first draft. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm just going to send this and see what it comes back with. Because really, I just want to think about the angles. I want to think about the premises with which that it's kind of finding real world proof. So we have this one. Generative AI enrollments on Coursera grew 1,000% year over year. So that's kind of a statistic about how people want to learn about AI, which is useful, but it's not really that compelling in this first point of pain digging. AI now lets even someone with a little practical experience create a course, ebook, or digital product. That's not really what we're talking about. AI named as a key accelerator because it lowers creation friction. That could be another one about how it's kind of similar to this, where people are churning out AI generated courses, books, and slop. That's kind of a popular term for a lot of AI generated stuff. Maybe that could be useful. AI gives a big boost to creators. It simultaneously raises the bar because more people can publish. So differentiation, brand depth, and expertise matter to stand out. That's useful. That also is going into this idea of just increased competition. More fake experts than ever. It's not a bad one. Shows generative AI adoption and deployment are climbing fast. Yeah, kind of the same idea. A study comparing ChatGPT to human fitness coaches found that AI-generated 16-week programs were similar, with differences not statistically significant. Suggesting AI can substitute for at least some entry-level coaching value. This is interesting. I've actually never heard about this, where they did a study on ChatGPT 4 as a virtual fitness coach and its effectiveness in providing weight loss and fitness guidance. This is interesting, not because a huge amount of our clients are literally fitness coaches, but this is kind of the question that should hopefully be on our ideal customers' minds, which is, am I going to be replaced by AI? And we want people who are at least thinking about AI. We don't want people who are ignorant of it. And this is actually a pretty interesting study. I'd never heard about this. I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna save the name. I'm gonna grab this article, highlight it here. That is actually pretty good. I've never found that. We have never used that in one of our pieces of marketing. But in order to be a good seller, to be a good marketer, you have to be a good buyer. And part of that means you want to think about what sounds interesting, what sounds compelling or persuasive to you. Because I am naturally a very skeptical person. It's very hard to convince me naturally to buy into things, to believe things. So part of my job as a copywriter, as a marketer sometimes is being a little bit more open-minded, to suspend judgment a little bit and to think about, is this something that could be a real-world possibility? Where this is obviously from the National Library of Medicine. I don't think this is some company that has a vested interest in selling me something. I don't think this is like ChatGPT propaganda. So this is actually pretty interesting that they found that ChatGPT generated fitness programs were actually just as good as people working with like personalized health coaches. I'm going to ask it this. Another reason I like Perplexity. Find me more similar to the GPT-4 fitness coach study of comparing AI learning / coaching to real world human experts. see what it finds. And a lot of marketing, a lot of copywriting is literally just this. It's research. You'll notice I've done very little writing despite being an hour into this. And that's because, like I mentioned earlier, if I write out a good table of contents, if I write out a good belief ladder that has all of the major points I want to hit, and if I have an AI that's already trained on a lot of my writing, which I have, that's, we eat our own dog food. I use my own software platform to build my own AI that can write like me. It's not going to be that hard for it to literally spit out the sentences. That's not really what my time should be spent doing. My time needs to be kind of spent on the strategic part of deciding what is our marketing argument going to be? What are the points of proof that we're going to be using to support that? Which again, I'm doing this inside of a video just to show kind of like the first draft. It's probably not going to be done inside of like an hour and a half. It's definitely not even going to be done in one session because we're going to write a VSL, we're going to record it, we're going to put it out, we're going to get data back from our advertising, from our marketing efforts, and use that to refine it. But let's see what we have here. Math tutoring, ChatGPT versus humans. Only the ChatGPT condition produced statistically significant learning gains versus control. This is using a lot of technical verbiage. Maybe I can... ChatGPT generated help produces learning gains equivalent to human tutor. So it's basically saying ChatGPT is just as good as a human tutor when it comes to helping people with math. That one's good, but I feel like it's very academic. Like it's easier for our clients to imagine like a fitness coach being replaced by AI than it is like a math tutor, because I think our clients are more similar to a personal trainer. An AI tutor in a university science course found students using the AI tutor learn significantly more in less time. Okay. A lot of these are about school. Medical health advice and coaching analogs. Comparing ChatGPT-4's medical advice to cardiology experts found comparable efficacy and medical accuracy overall, with humans producing more high accuracy, but also more low accuracy answers. Let's click this. So it's basically saying ChatGPT could replace doctors. This is interesting. I'll save this because, again, I think, if we're thinking about what have historically been the most valuable, the most highest paid industries of knowledge work, it would be doctor, lawyer, engineer. So if we're talking about doctors being replaced by AI, then that would potentially mean a lot of other industries are in trouble as well. Humans still outperformed ChatGPT clinical judgment. Okay, there is a human strength there. 2024 comparative study of large language models versus professional health coaches. ChatGPT's 4's responses were often scored on par or better than human coaches. Interesting. Okay, this is kind of similar to the one that we already found about personal training. Seems like there's a lot of studies around that, which is interesting, but we'll save this one for now. Close this. So it found me a lot about like tutoring and education and personal training. I'm going to say any around business, consulting, investing, or mindset coaching, because those are probably the other main categories of types of clients that use our platform. Consultants using GPT-4 produce work with independent rated about 40% higher quality on average than those without AI. They finish tasks 25% faster, suggesting AI can materially augment consulting style problem solving. That's interesting. Interesting. This is from New York Times. This is a good headline. And I love a good headline, especially from I have my web extension blocking this. I love a good headline from a reputable news source like New York Times or Forbes, because you can imagine it's going to make me make an account. If I was just to screenshot this, ChatGPT helps and worries business consultants. Someone doesn't even need to hear the rest of it. And again, this is third party. It's not me saying this. This is the New York Times, generally considered a well-known source of information. It's persuasive. It is something that someone would believe to be true. That one's interesting. I'm going to come back to it. This one's about finance, investing. 34% of Americans say they trust ChatGPT over human experts in general, but they draw a hard line on relying solely on it for serious matters such as complex legal or financial decisions. That is actually great because that is almost verbatim what we say later in the VSL around, where is it? Create this part where we're talking about needs real solutions to painful problems. So even if we don't use this in the hook, even if we don't use this in the opening, this could be very, very useful. Does it say most trusted use cases of ChatGPT were career advice, educational support, product recommendations? They don't trust it for legal or medical advice. 34% of people. Yeah, this is all good. I like the headline too. So I'm going to say the headline, I'm going to put it right here. And I'm going to copy this, stick it in here. Oops. There we go. This is finding me some good stuff that I have never heard of before. Compared advice column answers written by professional human columnists. Participants rated ChatGPT's answer as more balanced, complete, empathetic, helpful, and better overall. Yet 85% said they still would prefer their own dilemmas be answered by a human, even though they could not reliably tell which answer came from the AI. That's interesting. So people actually like the AI more, but because it was an AI, they kind of had a judgment or a bias against it. I'm not really sure what these say. This is basically saying how scary good AI has gotten, where they believe that they're interacting with a human when it was, in fact, AI. Simulated AI coach versus human coaches. Client sense of working lines, bond, agreement, and goals. Participants built moderately high and statistically similar. Okay, this is basically just saying they trust the AI just as much as they trust a human. 47% say they got better career advice from ChatGPT than from their manager. That's good, and that's from Forbes. And again, New York Times, Forbes. This is kind of how most people make decisions. They say, okay, what are the experts saying? What are the reputable institutions saying? 47% of Gen Z, the fastest growing employee demographic. This is good. I'm listing as many as I can because I want to brainstorm. I want to pick out of these which are going to create the best argument. I'm not 100% sold on any of them yet, but we're getting there. That one's a good one. While many people quietly prefer the content of AI's advice, they continue to state a preference for humans when it comes to personal, high-stakes, or emotionally loaded decisions. That is good, which is directly relevant to mindset and executive coaching. Is that the same article? Let me find where that is. What was the statistic? Emotionally loaded. Let me find where that is. Was it in the Forbes article? Or this one? Emotionally. Or I'll just ask it. Where is the high stakes, emotionally loaded decisions fact from? Have AI do the hard work. Comes from a combination. Okay, so it was from 2. The report explicitly notes that respondents draw a line at high-stakes domains preferring human judgment. Okay. It's not as useful as I thought. It wrote it really well, and I thought that was like a direct quote from one of these articles, but it sounds like it's not. In which case, it's hyperbole. It's not a fact. It's not, the New York Times says this. It's not Forbes saying this. So maybe it's not as useful. So we have a few ideas here. We have all of these statistics that Perplexity just found for me. We have this bigger idea of just competition, which obviously then AI is kind of becoming the second new competitor in addition to all of the people on social media who are claiming to do the same thing as you. People are seeing more advertisements. I think just based on what I know is working with our marketing right now, where, like I mentioned earlier, the top hook that people are clicking on and buying into is this idea that ChatGPT is killing online courses. I'm going to actually write that here. ChatGPT/AI is killing online courses. It's a very simple idea, and not 100% of our audience sells online courses, but they probably thought about it if they're a coach or they're an author or they're a speaker or something like that. So this is like a secondary selling point. I wouldn't say this is the primary selling point. Same with this. The bigger primary idea is that people are preferring and trusting AI more for most of their questions and advice in their life / career / business. Because that is basically what this hook is communicating. And it's also what a lot of these statistics found, which is, people are finding that they can lose weight just as easily with ChatGPT than with an actual fitness coach. They're getting good medical advice. They're rating it on par with doctors, and a third of Americans trust ChatGPT more than a human expert. This honestly is probably the most compelling. Like, that's like, what the hell? Like, if I'm a coach, if I'm a knowledge worker, that one kind of freaks me out a little bit. Where ChatGPT and AI have only now been out for like 2 years, and we're already at a third of the American population trust ChatGPT more than a human expert. What is that going to look like in another 2 to 3 years? I'm going to write that. What is that going to look like in another 2 to 3 years? That one, I think, is a good leading statistic that I want to bring up pretty early. Out of these, probably the medical advice one, because I feel like that's very high stakes, which is honestly kind of a contradiction to this headline, which is that they don't trust it for legal and medical advice. So then it's kind of building it up and saying, actually, people are starting to realize that it is just as good, if not better, than even a doctor's recommendations. And then I think it makes sense to round out with these two about personal training, because these are more like personal, down to earth. These are more academic, where we're talking about just like people trusting AI in general and it doing something that has traditionally been considered very difficult and very prestigious, which is becoming a doctor, giving medical advice. And then we pare it down to everyday normal life scenario, which is, you want to lose weight. What do? Do you go on YouTube? Do you go DM a personal trainer, or do you ask ChatGPT? And which is going to be the most effective for you? And if you're a young person, you're in your 20s, early on in your career, are you going to move ahead better in your career by asking your manager, asking your boss, asking a mentor, or just asking ChatGPT? That, to me, is pretty compelling. And now, does it even make sense to have these, at least in this section? And we also have these other two statistics that I had earlier, which are compelling, and I'm going to want to do a little bit more work on those. But these 2 points, do they even make sense here? They honestly, because none of the rest of what I've written so far has even really talked about competition. Because that's not the argument we're making. We're not saying, oh, there's so many coaches, there's so many people doing what you're trying to do, and that's why business is hard. We're saying business is hard because AI and ChatGPT is disrupting the entire industry. So this kind of just sounds like, oh yeah, and by the way, you also probably have competitors, where it's like, okay, there's a copywriting principle. There's a really great video on it. It's called The Rule of One. If you look up on YouTube, Rule of One, Mark Ford, there should be like an old blurry video about it. Really, really great video. Basically, the concept, as it implies, is good marketing follows one idea. You don't want to have, we have this idea, and also we have this other idea, and this, it's like when you start making a sales pitch or you start making a piece of marketing like that, it doesn't sound as persuasive. Good marketing focuses on one big idea, which our one big idea is AI is disrupting the business model of online education, online courses, and online coaching. So this doesn't really fall into that idea. So I'm glad I wrote out a lot of these ideas, because as you can see, even for someone like myself, the supposed expert, a lot of my initial ideas are not that good. So I'm going to delete this for now. If I want, I'm sure I can, I could watch this video back and I'll remember it. But this now all falls into this general idea that then leads into this pointing belief, which then is going to lead into them becoming a user of our platform. So I like this. This flows well into the statistic about Udemy and Coursera, coinciding with ChatGPT doubling from 400 million to 800 million users. I could put a statistic here like TK, find more statistics about general growth, massive increase in adoption in AI. Like, I think now AI in general is used by like probably over half the planet, like 2 or 3 billion people if you combine all the companies. I'm going to want to find a few others here. But for now, just this general statistic about ChatGPT now independently almost has 1 billion users. It starts to make sense. I like what we have so far enough that I'm almost kind of fine to leave these placeholders. I'm going to do TK. So I have this placeholder, finding more statistics. I'm just going to do the same thing that I already showed you, which is use Perplexity, 10 minutes, find a few that I like. This one I'm probably going to fill in right now. I think there was one more. Yeah, the case studies, same thing. I'll use a few that we already know, or I'll use Perplexity to find some. But this one's important. I actually want to fill this in before I do a draft with my Lucas AI. Because this is a place where we could lose people if this is not a good example. What we have here is AI that is trained. We're defining what digital labor is, and we're saying how it's new and it's different than just ChatGPT or whatever else. It's trained on one specific type of knowledge and expertise, can actually carry out real tasks similar to how a human employee would. So I want to give them like a real example. So it's not as abstract, it's not as academic. Like, this is actually what digital labor is. Honestly, I could do the same thing here, or I could show them a real world example. Where the first one that comes off the top of my head that we've used in marketing, a company called Do Not Pay. It's basically AI digital labor for fighting parking tickets. You can look it up. It's a really cool company. Because you imagine you get a parking ticket. Most people are not going to show up to court. They're not going to hire a lawyer. They just pay the parking ticket. But Do Not Pay uses AI to fight all these parking tickets. And obviously, ChatGPT can't do that. ChatGPT could maybe write you what you're going to say in the courtroom, but it's not actually going to fight the parking ticket for you. So this is a great example of it doing quote unquote human level tasks. Another one, Cal AI calorie counting app. I've used this example a few times before. In the App Store, I think it's number 3 in health and fitness. Hundreds of thousands of 5-star ratings. Basically what it does is, if you're eating a sandwich, you can take a picture of the sandwich, and using AI, it will calculate the macros. So it'll calculate the calories, the carbohydrates, the protein, etc. Which again, ChatGPT, if you just took a picture of something, it's going to say, oh, there's a picture of a sandwich. It probably has this, that, and the other. And it could write a meal plan for you. But what Cal AI does is it does all of that, and it live tracks your daily calorie count, keeps you accountable to your fitness goals. And that's why, even though ChatGPT exists, this is number 3 in the App Store in a very competitive category. So is this enough? And again, putting myself in the shoes of talking to one of my clients at the bar, if I gave them these 2 examples, would they get what digital labor AI is? If I told them about Do Not Pay and Cal AI, would they understand how this is new and it's different than ChatGPT? I think it is. And I want to kind of wrap it up with one sentence. One sentence definer. It basically does the work for you. Goes that extra mile that ChatGPT can't. That's not perfect, but that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. And when I use Lucas AI, the whole point of using AI to like do copywriting for you is it can give you a lot of ideas and you can pick your favorite one. So this is pretty good. You'll notice we have not even gotten into the pitch, and that's because I'm going to do it right now. It's so simple. Put together a masterclass on how any coach can start doing this. $29, one time, instant access. Learn how to start doing this and get our resources to help you. This is what I'm talking about. Like the pitch, the offer is not, it's not the important thing. The important thing is how do you differentiate from the 10,000 other ads that people are seeing, and the decisions that they have to be making inside their business. So that's why I spent so much time, an hour and a half, on belief 1 and belief 2, because if those are strong, you know, we're doing a low ticket funnel. We're asking for $29. If someone is interested and they're persuaded by everything I've presented with them so far, this is not really the hard part. I'm literally just going to leave this there for now. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to show this because I don't want this to turn into a 2-hour long video. But I'm going to use my Lucas AI, which again, we eat our own dog food. We built this on our Kadar platform. I basically took all of my previous sales funnels, ads, everything that I've ever copywritten, throw this into Lucas AI, and it's going to give me the first draft of the VSL. I'm going to pause the video and come back once that's done. All right, so I have the first draft that Lucas AI wrote for me, which is a behemoth. How long is this? It is 4,000 words. And this is definitely not the final version that it's going to be. This is really just meant to assess the overall narrative, the overall persuasive flow, to see how I like it. Because it's one thing to look at, you know, a bulleted list, and then it's another thing to actually read and see how does it feel if I was hearing this VSL, if I was seeing it. If I was actually doing this on my own without recording it, I would throw this into a voiced text tool, basically something where it reads the text out loud, and I would actually want to listen to how it sounds. That, in my opinion, is much better than just reading it, because like a lot of things, if you just stare at the screen for so long, you're not going to be in the same shoes that your clients are in, that your potential leads or customers are in. But if I'm reading this, if you're a coach, course creator, whatever, the hook could be a little better, and that's something that I would probably tweak on my own, is just the actual literal verbiage of the opening sentences. Like, this is not amazing. I would highlight this and probably want to change it later. This is also kind of a waste. I would probably delete a lot of this. The online education industry, the thing that made me a multimillionaire at 24 years old, the thing that has created more wealth for regular people as probably any other business model in the last decade, is getting disrupted massively, specifically ChatGPT and tools and the like it. It's pretty good. I like that flow. I like how that sounds and feels. Probably notice this yourself when you have a question now. Where do you go first? Think about it honestly. If you want to lose weight, how do you invest your money? Where do you go? A few years ago, the answer was probably YouTube, or maybe buy an online course or hire a coach. But now most people are opening up ChatGPT. Recent study, now it's using the statistics I found, 34% of Americans now trust ChatGPT over human experts. Over a third of the country would rather ask a robot than ask a real person. This is a little repetitive. I'd probably delete that. GPT-4 is now matching. I'd reword this to be ChatGPT. Is being tested as a virtual fitness coach and performing comparably to certified personal trainers. That 30% was from earlier this year. What do you think is going to look like in 2 to 3 years from now when AI gets even better? 50%, 60% higher. Trend is clear. People are preferring and trusting AI more for most of the... This is good. I like this flow. I would reword some things here and there, but for the first 80%, this initial draft, that's what AI is amazing at, I'm pretty happy. We've got the Udemy and the Coursera statistics about losing 120 million users, and then ChatGPT doubling in that same time. Wealth transfer happening in real time. That sounds exactly like what I would say. This is a little whatever. I'd probably delete that. They're not competing with AI. They're working with it. Instead, they're figuring out how to use AI to amplify. It's not... I like the flow. It's a little wordy, and I honestly, if I was going to redo this, but this is just a video, I would probably go back to Lucas AI and just tell it, like, make it 33% shorter. Like, this was, I just did it. It was 4,000 words. That would probably come out to be like 35 minutes if I was to speak it out loud. We could probably get rid of 10, 15 minutes, like have this be a 20, 25 minute VSL. But reading through it, I'm happy with the flow. And there's probably like another like 20, 30 minutes of work that I would have to put in to make this ready for me to actually record. But yeah, just scanning through this, I'm very happy with this initial first draft. And obviously, again, like this whole video has been about, this is really where the money is going to be made, is in the narrative flow, the strategic structure. That is infinitely more important than just the words, because I can tweak those. That's not hard, and AI can give me a really great starting foundation. Like here, saying you've probably heard of do not pay. They probably have not heard about that. Like we need to reword that, but that's literally something that would take a few minutes. So hopefully this video has been helpful. Hopefully it's been interesting to some of you to see kind of the way that I'm currently using AI in my copywriting flow, how I literally do this from start to finish. I am probably going to do another like 20, 30 minutes of tweaking, of just changing. The first thing I would do, make it probably 1,000 words shorter, so 25% shorter. Then I'm literally going to go through, highlight the parts that I don't love, tweak some of the words, put it into some of my own verbiage, delete things, rearrange things here and there. And then I'm going to record it. Like, I think that's one of the best things that we have now with AI in the world that we live in today, is I can literally get this VSL recorded, send to a video editor. We could have it live in 2 days. Like, that speed is what's going to set us apart from so many other companies and so many other competitors than it is me obsessing over, you know, the every single word inside this VSL. It's more important that we start getting feedback for it. And if that's interesting, I could do a similar video showing how we actually analyze and review the data that we get from our marketing so we know what to change. But again, overall, this is just an initial first draft. I wanted to kind of show behind the scenes of everything with my process. So if this is useful, leave a comment, some encouragement. That means a lot to me. If you have any questions, any videos, ideas, feel free to leave those in the comments as well. I read personally every single one. This YouTube channel is a little bit of a hobby for mine, a little bit of me just sharing behind the scenes of everything that I use to run my businesses, everything that I use to do marketing myself, because that is literally like 80, 90% of my day. And I love that. I love doing marketing. I love sharing it with other people. So let me know if this is useful. Let me know questions, ideas in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next one.